Chicago, Illinois, fall 1937. A small practice room at DuSable High School. Nat Cole, 17 years old, sat at the piano while his voice teacher, Mrs. Eleanor Blackwell, listened to him sing. He was working through body and soul, trying to apply the techniques she'd taught him: proper breath support, open throat, forward placement, all the classical fundamentals. Mrs. Blackwell stopped him halfway through the second verse. "Nathaniel, you're doing it again. You're singing through your nose, the tone is pinched, and that slight lisp on your S sounds, you need to correct that." "I'm trying," Nat said, "but when I open my throat more, I lose the sound I want." "The sound you want is incorrect. You have a limited range, barely 2 octaves. You breathe in odd places. Your vibrato is inconsistent, and you mumble. Your consonants." She paused, then delivered the verdict that would echo through his life. "I'm being honest with you because I care about your future. You will never be a professional singer with this technique, but you're an excellent pianist. Focus on that." Nat looked down at the piano keys. He'd heard similar assessments before. His voice was wrong, too nasal, too limited, too imperfect. "What if I don't want to just play piano?" he asked quietly. "Then you'll be disappointed," Mrs. Blackwell said. "The voice you have won't succeed in professional music. I'm sorry, but that's the truth." She was completely wrong, but it would take years for Nat to prove it. Before we dive into how Nat King Cole's flawed vocal technique became the gold standard for intimate singing, how every element the experts said was wrong became his signature, and how he redefined what it meant to sing properly, let me ask, where are you watching from? Drop a comment, because this story about authenticity defeating technical perfection is going to change how you think about what makes a voice great. Classical vocal training in the 1930s had rigid rules. Good voice needed. Wide range, at least 2.5 octaves, ideally 3. Strong, consistent vibrato forward placement with no nasality, perfect diction with crisp consonants, powerful projection for concert halls. Dramatic dynamics from whisper to forte. Nat Cole's voice violated almost every rule. His range was limited, about 2 octaves from low F to high F. Most trained singers could hit 2.5 to 3 octaves easily. Ella Fitzgerald had 3 octaves. Sarah Vaughan could span 4. Frank Sinatra had close to 3. Nat's range was technically that of a baritone, but a narrow baritone at that. Songs had to be carefully chosen and arranged to stay within his comfortable range. His vibrato was inconsistent, sometimes present, sometimes absent. Listen to any Nat King Cole recording and you'll hear it. Some notes have a gentle vibrato, others are straight tone with no vibration at all. Classical training demanded consistent vibrato for warmth and richness. Every sustained note should have that gentle oscillation of pitch. Nat's vibrato came and went depending on the phrase, the emotion, the moment, sometimes even within the same word. His tone had what voice teachers called nasal resonance, sound that came through the nose rather than the mask of the face or the chest. Listen to him sing Unforgettable, and you can hear where the sound is placed, forward. In the nasal cavity, not in the deeper resonances classical singers cultivated. This was considered a fundamental flaw, a sign of poor technique. Proper voice production should create a rich, round tone using resonance from the chest and head, not the nose. He had a slight lisp, not severe, but noticeable on S sounds if you paid attention. Sweet had a softer S than most singers would produce. Smile came out with that characteristic gentle quality. Classical training focused heavily on perfect diction, every consonant crisp and clear, every vowel pure. A lisp was considered a speech impediment that must be corrected before professional singing was possible. His breathing was unconventional. He'd breathe in the middle of words sometimes, breaking phrases in places that violated musical phrasing rules. Listen to Mona Lisa, he breathes after. Smile instead of after Mona Lisa, breaking the natural phrase. Proper singing required breath control that supported long, flowing lines, breathing only at musical punctuation points. Nat's breathing seemed almost conversational, natural rather than trained, as if he were speaking the lyrics rather than singing them. And he was breathy. Air leaked through his vocal cords, creating a soft, intimate quality that classical teachers considered weak and unsupported. A properly supported voice should be clear and pure, with clean vocal cord closure and no air escape. Nat's voice had audible breathiness on almost every note. You could hear the air flowing even as he sustained pitches. This was textbook bad technique. His pitch was even occasionally imperfect. Not wildly out of tune, but sometimes he'd slide up to a note rather than hitting it cleanly. Or end a phrase just slightly flat. Classical perfection demanded precise pitch on every note. Nat's pitch was expressive, slightly flexible, almost speech-like. By every technical standard, Nat Cole's voice was wrong. But here's what the voice teachers didn't understand. Nat wasn't trying to sing opera. He wasn't preparing for concert halls. He was creating something new, intimate, conversational singing that felt like someone talking directly to you, not performing at you. In 1939, Nat formed the King Cole Trio in Lowe's Angels. Oscar Moore on guitar, Johnny Miller on bass, Nat on piano. It was an instrumental group. Nat had taken his voice teacher's advice. He focused on piano, but occasionally, almost accidentally, he'd sing, not as a featured vocalist, just little asides, humming along with a melody, singing a verse here and there. When the mood struck, the audience reaction was immediate. When Nat played piano, they applauded politely, appreciated the technical skill, the jazz improvisations, the sophisticated arrangements. But it was respectful appreciation, the kind you give to skilled musicianship. When he sang, they leaned in, conversations stopped, people put down their drinks. Something about his voice grabbed them in a way his piano, playing, technically brilliant as it was, didn't. It happened at the Radio Room on North Vine Street in Hollywood. The trio was playing instrumentals as usual. Someone requested Sweet Lorraine. The trio knew it as an instrumental, but the person wanted to hear the lyrics. Almost reluctantly, Nat sang it. The room changed. You could feel it. The casual nightclub atmosphere became something more focused, more intimate. People weren't just listening politely anymore. They were connecting. After the set, people came up asking about the singer. Not the piano player, the singer. They wanted to know if Nat would sing more songs, wanted to know if there was a record of him singing. They'd heard plenty of piano players. They'd never heard a voice quite like his. Oscar Moore noticed. You should sing more. People like it. I'm not a singer, Nat said. My voice is. I've been told it's not good enough. By who? Music teachers. Oscar laughed. Man, forget what they told you. Listen to how people respond. That's what matters. But Nat was hesitant. Years of being told his voice was wrong had left him self-conscious. He kept singing to a minimum, treating it as a novelty rather than his main instrument. Then, in 1943, everything changed. Capitol Records wanted to sign the King Cole Trio, but they had a condition. They wanted Nat to sing, not just play piano. Carlos Gastel, the trio's manager, brought Nat the news. Capitol loves the group, but they want you as a vocalist. They think your voice is your selling point. Nat was skeptical. Capitol Records thinks my voice is good. Have they heard actual singers? They've heard everyone, and they specifically want you. Your voice is different, intimate, personal. It's not like the big band singers they already have. The first recording session for Capitol was That Ain't Right in November 1943. Producer Lee Gillette was in the booth. Nat was at the piano preparing to sing. Gillette's voice came through the talkback. Nat, can you give us more volume? Project a bit more. Nat tried, but when he tried to sing properly, with more power, the intimacy disappeared. The special quality vanished. Actually, Gillette said after hearing the louder take, go back to what you were doing before, the quiet thing, it works better. That was the moment. Lee Gillette, a professional producer for a major label, was telling Nat to sing the way his voice teachers had said was wrong. Soft, breathy, intimate, don't project. Don't use classical technique, just be natural. The record was a moderate hit, enough to justify more recordings, and with each session, Lee Gillette encouraged Nat to lean into his flaws. That breathy quality, keep it. It's what makes you sound like you're singing directly to one person. The way you breathe in the middle of phrases, it sounds conversational, like you're talking, not performing. The limited range, you're not trying to show off, you're trying to communicate. That's more important. Everything the voice teachers had criticized, Capitol Records was celebrating. Nature Boy in 1948 was the breakthrough, a strange, haunting melody. Nat sang it with all his wrong techniques on full display. Breathy tone, limited range, the song stays within one octave. Minimal vibrato, nasal quality. That slight lisp on There Was a Boy. The song sold over 1 million copies, topped the charts for 8 weeks, made Nat King Cole a star. Music critics analyzed it. What made this recording so compelling? Technically, by classical standards, the vocal performance was flawed, but emotionally it was perfect. Nat sounded vulnerable, mysterious, intimate. You believed every word because he wasn't trying to impress you with technique. He was trying to tell you a story. Mona Lisa in 1950 cemented it. The song became one of the biggest hits of the decade. Again, Nat's vocal performance violated every classical rule. The range was narrow, the melody sits in less than an octave. His breathing was unconventional, breaking phrases in odd places. His tone was soft, breathy, intimate, but that's why it worked. Mona Lisa isn't an opera aria, it's a personal meditation on art and beauty and mystery. Nat sang it like he was thinking out loud, wondering about this painting, sharing his thoughts with you quietly. A classical singer would have projected, would have used dramatic dynamics, would have made it a performance. Nat made it a conversation, and that's what changed popular music. Before Nat, most popular singers used techniques derived from classical training or big band projection. You had to sing loud enough to be heard over an orchestra. You had to project to fill a concert hall. Technique was about power and range and drama. Nat proved you could do the opposite. With a microphone, you didn't need to project. You could sing softly, intimately, conversationally. The technology changed the rules, but Nat was the first to truly understand and exploit that change. His flaws became strengths in the new context, the nasal quality. It made his voice distinctive, instantly recognizable. You could hear three notes and know it was Nat King Cole. The breathiness, it created intimacy. You felt like he was singing directly to you, not to an audience of thousands. The limited range, it made his songs accessible. He wasn't showing off, he was communicating. Anyone could imagine singing along because the melodies stayed in a comfortable range. The unconventional breathing, it made the phrasing natural, conversational, not stiff and formal but human. The slight lisp, it added character, a tiny imperfection that made him more real, less polished, more genuine. Every element that voice teachers said would prevent success became part of what made him successful. By the 1950s, a generation of singers was copying Nat King Cole's technique. Perry Como listened to Nat's records obsessively, studying how he created that intimate sound. Comeau's own style, relaxed, conversational, gentle, was directly influenced by Nat's approach. Dean Martin took Nat's casual phrasing and made it even more laid back, creating the ultimate, easy listening style. The way Dean would almost throw away lyrics, sing them conversationally as if he'd just thought of them, came from watching how Nat treated songs as conversations rather than performances. Johnny Mathis, when he started recording in the late 1950s, was explicitly trying to sound like Nat King Cole. His producer Mitch Miller even told him, "Study Nat, learn how he creates intimacy. That's what you need." And it wasn't just male singers. Nancy Wilson studied Nat's phrasing. Dionne Warwick learned from his conversational approach. Even Barbra Streisand, who had a much wider range and more classical technique, cited Nat as an influence for his emotional directness. They were all learning from Nat, learning to sing wrong the way he did, because audiences loved it, and they were learning specific techniques, how to use breathiness for emotional effect. Perry Como, how to phrase conversationally rather than musically. Dean Martin, how to create intimacy through microphone technique. Johnny Mathis, how to prioritize emotional truth over technical display. All of them. Sinatra, who'd started in the 1940s with a more traditional big band approach, began shifting his style by the 1950s. He became less about powerful projection and more about intimate communication. Listen to his 1950s Capitol albums. The influence of Nat's conversational style is clear. Sinatra even acknowledged it in interviews. Nat taught us all that less can be more. Voice teachers had to adapt. By the late 1950s, some progressive teachers were actually studying Nat King Cole's technique and teaching it to their students, not as how to sing incorrectly, but as a legitimate style, intimate vocal production. Microphone technique, conversational phrasing. The things Nat did instinctively were now being analyzed and taught. Margaret Whitfield, a voice teacher in New York, wrote an article in 1959 for a music education journal. We must recognize that amplified intimate singing requires different techniques than classical projection. Nathaniel Cole has pioneered a valid approach that we can no longer dismiss as inferior. The voice teacher who told Nat he'd never be a professional singer probably never saw that article, but she'd been teaching the old rules in a new world. She couldn't imagine that limitations could become innovations. Nat himself was always slightly uncomfortable with his voice. Even after decades of success, even after millions of records sold, he'd still reference those early critiques. In a 1964 interview, a journalist asked him about his vocal technique. Nat smiled. "I don't have technique, that's the secret. I just sing the way I talk." My voice teachers told me that was wrong. Maybe it is wrong by their standards, but it works. Do you think your voice is good? The journalist pressed. Nat paused. I think my voice is honest. Whether it's good or not, people seem to connect with it. That's all that matters. He died months later in February 1965. By then, the Nat King Cole style was the dominant approach to intimate popular singing. Frank Sinatra, who had started with a more traditional big band projection style, had shifted toward Nat's conversational intimacy by the 1960s. Even Sinatra recognized that Nat had found something fundamental about how to communicate through song. Today, every vocal coach teaching contemporary styles references Nat King Cole. His technique is the foundation of modern intimate singing. The soft tone, the conversational phrasing, the minimal vibrato, the focus on authenticity over technical display. Music schools now teach microphone technique as standard contemporary vocal training. Students learn to sing softly, to use breath for emotional effect, to phrase conversationally rather than formally. They're learning to sing wrong the way Nat did, except it's not wrong anymore, it's the standard. The irony is absolute. The boy told he'd never be a professional singer became the singer every professional studies. The voice that violated every classical rule became the rule. What changed? Not Nat's voice. His flaws were always there. What changed was the understanding that technical correctness and emotional effectiveness are different things. Voice teachers were applying old standards to a new medium. They were teaching for concert halls. Nat was pioneering for recording studios. Different contexts required different techniques, but more fundamentally, they were missing the point of music. It's about communicating emotion. Nat understood that instinctively. His flaws helped him communicate more effectively than technical perfection ever could. That's the legacy, not just the songs. The proof that authenticity matters more than perfection, that limitations can become innovations, that the experts aren't always right, and that sometimes the voice that breaks every rule is the voice that writes new ones.